Hopefully you can hear me. I just wanted to show you how I feed my sourdough starter to make it easier for you guys. I have a couple of jars that I switch in and out of whenever they need cleaning. Before I put any starter in, I write the weight on the bottom of the jar, just the empty jar without the lid, so that when I'm weighing and stuff, I can subtract. So usually first thing I do before feeding is I discard some. I keep a jar discard for recipes, and I've already discarded, so I'm just gonna feed what's in here. But I just weigh it in grams, so this is 665 grams minus 465. So I have 200 grams of starter that I'm going to feed. And so I'll just zero out my scale and add 200 grams of all-purpose flour and 200 grams of filtered water. I tend to buy organic, unbleached all-purpose flour. I can get it in bulk at Costco. Some Sam's carry it, or I just get it at Walmart, wherever. You just want it to be unbleached and all-purpose. So that's what I'm gonna do first. I'm gonna feed the starter. And it's gonna seem like I'm making a lot, but it's because I'm gonna show you how to make both loaves of bread. So bear with me. So I do it all by weight. Some people are able to do it by eyeball or just with measuring cups. I am not that good yet. So I just generally weigh it out. It doesn't matter what kind of jar you use. This is a Weck brand jar, but you can use any kind of jar, any size, any shape. I have a few different ones that I switch and alter into and out of. I have a quart sized, I've got a half-gallon sized. The big thing is just having a wide mouth makes it easier. So we have 200 grams of flour. We're gonna add 200 grams of water. So now we'll measure in 200 grams of water and then we'll mix it all up. It's a bit much, but I may have to put this in a larger jar. This happens to me a lot. And I just mix it. This is a chopstick, but you can use a spatula, a spoon, a fork, whatever. It's pretty easy. But you just mix it all up until it's, you know, all pretty well lumpy and gross looking. I don't know what else to describe the look of it as. People ask, and I don't know. It's just kind of like lumpy flour paste. So, looks like flour paste. And then we let it rise on the counter at room temperature for my own sake, because I tend to forget time and what time I do things. Like, for instance, I have no idea what time it is right now. I just grab a dry erase marker and I mark where the starter is on the side of the jar. And sometimes I'll write the time there, because when it's about doubled in size is how you know it's active and ready. When it's super bubbly, I will show y'all kind of what that looks like whenever it's at the jar time. But what time is it? So it's 3. I don't anticipate this will be like ready to bake with until tonight, but I will show y'all as it's doubling in size, and I'll take a couple of pictures too and show y'all how sometimes I keep track of it by coming back and marking a line of where the starter's at and what time it's there. But we need this to double in size about, but I'll show y'all some tricks to know when it's ready. And one more thing, after feeding it, I have this, like, this is just a piece of like cotton fabric that I drape over the top so nothing falls into it. You can also set your jar lid on top. I only do that so that the exposure to air on the surface is reduced. 1, so the top doesn't dry out, and 2, so bugs and things don't drop in or fly in, especially if I'm doing other stuff in the kitchen. One more thing. So I keep a jar of discard in the fridge. I make cookies, scones, biscuits out of this, crackers, pizza dough, all kinds of things. you don't want to keep starter on hand, you can, whatever you don't want to feed, you can just toss, or you can use it to make other things. Biscuits, scones, literally almost anything. I'm going to be making brownies with it later and cookies. So you can use your discard for all kinds of stuff. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. One other thing is, like, if you can see on here, there's kind of a layer of water on the top. Let me see how well I can show you guys. But it looks kind of grayish brown. So that is called hooch. Perfectly normal, smells kind of sour, but the hooch is just a way of letting you know that your starter is hungry and it wants to be fed. You can stir it in, it'll make your starter a little bit more sour, or you can pour it off. I do either or depending on just the loaves I'm making. But it is totally normal for sourdough. All right, just wanted to give y'all a quick 2-hour-ish update. So you can see we've had some minimal growth in the last 2 hours. It's not looking too much different than when I first fed it, except that we have a few tiny bubbles developing. So we still have quite a ways to go before it's ready and bubbly and active to bake with, but I just wanted to give you a quick check-in to show you. In the summer when my kitchen's warmer, I can have this, like this would be ready to go in 4 hours. But because it's colder right now than typical for my house, it's gonna take longer. So when it's warmer outside, your starter can get active more quickly versus when it's cold outside, it's slower. That's why like putting it in the fridge kind of makes it hibernate. So this is just a 2-hour update. We've barely grown. We are not nearly active or ready enough to use. So if you use a recipe that calls for active starter, you want it to be bubbly, we're not there yet. I will do another check-in in a couple more hours. Okay, so something I forgot to mention when I was talking about temperatures. Your starter is slower when it's cold and more active and comes to being ready and bubbly when it's warmer. You can recreate those like temperatures artificially. So you could feed your starter and then immediately put it in the fridge if you knew that you weren't going to actually bake with it for at least 24 to 48 hours. It will feed in the fridge and get really bubbly. It will just be a very slow process. Likewise, you can put your starter in a warm environment. So sometimes when I want to speed up the feeding process, I will microwave a measuring cup or a mug of water for a few minutes so it's nice and warm and damp in there, and then I'll place my starter in the microwave. Not running because you don't want to cook anything, but just so it's a warmer environment. Likewise, you could probably put it in your oven with the light on. The light bulb in my oven gets a little bit too hot currently, but you can put it in the oven with the light on if you want to make sure that it's going to be activate faster. So we're not quite at a full 2 hours, but just so that you can see, last check-in I did was at 5. It's now 6:30, and as you can see, we've grown quite a bit more. We have more bubbles forming, and while we're still not quite ready yet to bake with, it's going to be another few hours, we are getting there. And so I will show you one of the tricks to knowing when your starter is ready to start baking with. One other tip, as you're looking at recipes, some people will call it a leaven. When they say 11, it's just an active and bubbly starter. And then your discard, if let's say you run out and you use all of the starter in the jar, you don't have anything remaining on the side walls, you can get a scoop of discard and feed it, and you'll still have starter. Starter and discard are the same thing until you feed them. One's just active and one's not. You can also get a piece of parchment paper and smear some discard or starter on it and dehydrate it essentially, and then grind it up into small like pieces. Like, I don't think I have any ready right now. And then you'll just have to have water and flour to rehydrate it and feed it. But you can keep it stored in your cabinet for 6 months or in your freezer for I think up to a year, possibly up to 2 years. So I usually keep a jar of discard, but I also keep some dried sourdough just in case I ever accidentally feed or kill my starter, so I can restart it again really easily. Okay, so So I found some. This is some dried sourdough starter. I just put it on parchment paper, let it dry overnight. And then once it was dry, I took the big pieces and broke them into smaller pieces and put them in a bag. And then from this, I will weigh it, add an equal amount of water and flour to feed it. Well, first I'll add water and kind of let it reconstitute a little bit, but then I'll add flour to feed it, and voila, you have started ready to go. So this one is about 6 months old. I will make a fresh bag of it soon and actually keep it in the freezer because it'll last longer. But dried starter, it's essentially been dehydrated, so it's ready to go. Just add water and flour. So if you ever kill part of your starter, you have more to go. The same can be done with the starter or the discard in your fridge if you keep any.